The rise and fall of Henry Hill and his life in the mafia, covering his relationship with his wife Karen and his mob partners Jimmy Conway and Tommy DeVito. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. This is Goodfellas. Welcome into Holstered Guns. We are excited to be talking about more guns. You know, Leo, lots of guns in the movies we selected for this off-season partnership. We had Tombstone, and we've had a lot of guns. We had Snatch last week. Not Sinners Around a Gun, but a gun is an important part of that. No different today. We've got more guns.
Yeah,
this is
totally by accident.
Holstered Guns. We are an off-season podcast. We normally cover football in the San Antonio area, but when there's not football in the San Antonio area, we have other interests. We have other things we love, and one of the things we love is film. And so we sit around and talk throughout the off-season about some of our favorite movies from our lifetime. And today is number 7 on the docket. We have 10 of these that we've selected. And it is the 1990s Martin Scorsese mafia pick, Goodfellas. A solid movie.
Yeah.
A really good movie. I don't know if I want to call it great, but I want to talk some about whether we think it's great or not. My name is Phillip Higginbotham. I'm joined as always by Leo. And Leo, you're a really funny guy.
Funny how? How am I funny? Am I here to amuse you?
It's funny to see that. So, like, I've been watching and paying attention to a lot of things. That pops up in children's cartoons.
Does it?
The Animaniacs have used it several times with their Goodfellas shorts of, oh, I'm a funny guy. Well, like, funny how? And I'm like, we don't need to encourage children maybe to watch Goodfellas yet. It's a good movie, but I don't know that children should be watching Goodfellas. But yeah, no, funny guy. You're a funny guy. We'll talk about that scene, I'm sure. It's one of the things that everybody talks about when they get to this movie. A little bit of just kind of the back of the baseball card on Goodfellas, made in 1990, directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Nicholas Pileggi and Martin Scorsese. It's based on Pileggi's book called Wise Guys, which is what the movie should have been called, because that's what the book was called. However, there was a television show that was moderately successful around the same time called Wise Guys, and they didn't want to run into that, so they called it Goodfellas instead. Stars Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Lorraine Bracco, Paul Sorvino, and then, as you mentioned earlier, Leo, the entire cast of Sopranos is auditioning for that show here in Goodfellas, apparently.
Yeah, 29 of them. I was floored by that number. I knew there were some. There's some obvious ones. But
Sure.
When I went back and found that there were actually 29 cast members of both the Goodfellas film and the Sopranos TV series, I was wowed by that. That's crazy. Makes sense, but
Right.
unexpected nonetheless.
Made on a budget of $25 million. Box office worldwide was only $47 million. Not what you would consider like ridiculously successful. But I think it's something that over time has really built its pedigree over rewatches, and it's kind of made its its way, which is true of a lot of the films, or some of the films we've talked about. Shawshank Redemption, one that we talked about a few weeks ago that was not a box office success,
Right.
but definitely a great movie. Runtime is 145 minutes, and there are times I watch this movie that I don't feel like it's a 2.5-hour movie.
No, it doesn't feel long.
And then there are times I watch this movie where it does feel like that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have to be in the right mood for it. It's a long one. I mean, it's a long movie. But when you do it right, 2.5 hours can be okay. And I think that Goodfellas is one of those. I just went and saw, like everybody did, I guess. I went and saw Wicked this weekend, and it's 2.5 hours. And I felt like it was over too quickly. Like I felt like it was over too soon. I was like, I could take more. Really great movie. I'm a big Broadway guy. I love Broadway musicals, and that's a great musical. So let's talk about our first contact with this movie, with Goodfellas. My first contact with this movie was in after college. Actually, I got a roommate, or I got an apartment. The only way I could afford the apartment was getting a roommate with a guy I didn't know very well. And he loved Goodfellas. Would watch it all the time. We had one of the first DVDs they made for this that you actually had to flip halfway through. You had to turn it out, or take it out and flip the disc over to watch the second half of the movie. And he'd watch it at least once a week. He loved the first half of this movie. He loved this movie, and I feel like now looking back, and he may feel this way too. I don't stay in contact with him. We didn't know each other very well. We lived together for a year. He moved out. We never, as far as I can remember, have spoke since then. Not because we had a problem with each other. It's just the way things go. So he may feel differently now, but at the time, he loved the first half of this movie. He loved Tommy DeVito, Joe Pesci's character. He thought that was all fun and great, and that's what he loved about Goodfellas. I think that's all the wrong reasons. Like, we'll talk more about what this movie is doing, because it's doing something specific. Scorsese had something very specific in mind for this movie, and it does it very well. But it's not about how cool Joe Pesci is. That's not the point of this movie. How about you, Leo? What was your contact with this one?
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's the perfect segue into my first contact with the movie. I did not see Goodfellas until 2 years later after it came out. And the reason I watched Goodfellas was because I saw Joe Pesci in Lethal Weapon 3 and thought he was absolutely fantastic. Loved him in Lethal Weapon 3. Heard about Goodfellas being a pretty decent gangster movie, and watched it because of Joe Pesci, and was not disappointed, of course. And then another one that came out right about that time, My Cousin Vinny, another great Joe Pesci movie. That made me a fan of Marissa Tomei, though. That movie did.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But Joe Pesci is who brought me into Goodfellas, and I remember watched it at home. We watched it on video. I think it was a Blockbuster rental that we did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I watched it twice before returning the tape, the VHS. So
was it a double VHS, or was it just a one tape VHS? That's a longer movie. Sometimes they had to double up on the tapes. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was a double. It might have been. Now that you say that, that kind of rings a bell. Yeah.
So crazy. We're going to talk more about Pesci. Pesci is a big part of this movie, a big part of this movie's success. But very interesting that you talk about Pesci, and that was what kind of brought you to Goodfellas. Goodfellas comes out in September of 1990. 2 months later, in November of 1990, Home Alone comes out.
Mhm.
So it is conceivable at some theater in some small town in 1990, you had two Joe Pesci movies that were very, very different playing at the same theater.
Mhm.
And then a few months later in February, March, whenever they did the Oscars, he wins the Oscar for supporting actor for Goodfellas, not for Home Alone, for Goodfellas.
Right.
And just an incredible amount of time for him. He has done some really, like, this is what he's known for, both of these sort of tough guy roles. I think Harry in Home Alone, that's where my kids know Joe Pesci from. If they see him anytime, they're like, hey, that's one of the guys from Home Alone. I think of him more as My Cousin Vinny or
Mhm.
Goodfellas. He's also done
Or
some odd
Leo.
things. Yeah, Leo Getz
Mhm.
is a character that gets on my ever-loving nerves. I can't stand Leo Getz.
He's fantastic.
I can't do it.
Okay.
Okay. He's in a great movie. What I think is a great movie that is very either not well known or people think it's too schlocky. With honors, he plays a bum at Harvard in Boston, and Brendan Fraser, Maura Kelly, Patrick Dempsey. If you've never seen With Honors, it's really, really good, and it is so outside of anything that Joe Pesci does. You forget it's Joe Pesci because it's just not his kind of thing. What makes this film great, Leo?
Well, for me, it's a couple of things. It's a great story. Um, it's your typical gangster movie, uh, with the friendships that develop, the quote unquote loyalties that develop, but that will only go so far before it all falls apart, as it inevitably does in these types of films or TV series. And hard choices have to be made, and usually lots of people end up whacked over
Right.
the situation. But the other thing about this movie that I really like, and I'm a fan of these types of movies, and it's the reason why I'm a fan of another movie that comes to mind with this movie that absolutely has nothing to do with it other than this fact, is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm a big fan of movies that show what's the word? Challenging relationships for married couples, and being able to, go through hardships, go through some tough situations, and still come out the other side, as a unit and back to back, and willing to fight and die for each other. Mr. and Mrs. Smith is a movie that is a great movie. Lots of people would argue that it's not that great, but because of the way it kind of really shows that element of relationships, it's always been a movie that I really like. I don't think Dolores would be mad at me, to divulge and tell people that, we've had, our challenges in our relationship. I mean, we got married as teenagers.
Right.
When you're a teenager, you don't know what the heck you're doing. You don't know where the heck you're going, and it takes a lot of effort and commitment, and it's easy to walk away from some of those hardships. It's a lot easier to do that than just kind of struggle your way through it and come out the other side so much stronger for that. But because of the relationship I have with my wife, and having gone through that, movies that kind of touch on that subject really kind of hit here with me. And there's a lot of that, I think, with Henry and Karen, where it starts off rocky when they first say there's no interest, and then I love how all of a sudden he's interested in her when she goes to tell him off, and let him have it, and that really appeals to him. And then just as it progresses, you know, they have some pretty significant altercations and fights, and at the end of it, you know, when it's would it be easy for him to go away and for her to stay with her family, her parents, as she's wanting to at the end? You know, he looks and he tells her, he's like, without you, I can't do it. Even knowing that it would probably mean death for him to stick around, he's like, I'm not going without you. You know, this is with a woman who not so in the not so distant past, he woke up and she's pointing a revolver at his face as he wakes up, you know. But that kind of uh, relationship or development, where you can go through hardships, you can go through these struggles and still come out better for it on the other side. That's kind of special to me. So
Yeah.
I really like that about this movie.
I agree with everything you said. I think the relationship between Karen and Henry is interesting. It's worth exploring and worth talking about. That's why Scorsese put it in there. I really wish he had not included at the very tail end of the movie, there is that trope of telling you what happened to everybody. And one of the things you find out is that Henry and Karen get divorced.
Yeah.
After after this movie has gone through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's any information in that I really needed in that whole thing. The Paul going to prison and dying in Fort Worth and Henry and Karen getting to. I don't know that we needed any of that.
All
it kind of short circuits some things, and I think one of the things that it really short circuits is what you're talking about, is the relationship between Henry and Karen. Because they do go all out at each other a few times, but they never consider, you know, being done with each other, and that means different things for each of them. Because Karen can divorce Henry and go back to her parents. Like, that's always there. Henry is not able to do that. He is not in a society or in a culture that will allow him to divorce. But he could absolutely still be done with Karen. He knows the right people and the right ways to do things, that Karen could just disappear. This is never a consideration for either of them. Nobody's, I was going to say nobody's right in this situation, but Henry is an awful person.
Yes.
Henry Hill is the real Henry Hill was an awful person.
He's a terrible husband.
He did all of these things. All of these things in the movie are based on his stories. So whether they're true or not, he believes that they're stories worth telling. And then he turned around, turned everybody else in that did those things with him, and lived on that for the next 2 decades of his life until he died. Henry Hill is a bad person, no matter what way you cut any of this. He did not get out of the mafia lifestyle because he had a change of heart or was a good person. That's not what happened. He was backed into a corner, and that was his only option, because he was not going to live any other way. I think some of the things that make this film great, obviously there's the memorable scenes, and maybe that's a place that we can talk about for a second. The scene between oh, that's weird. I'm hearing that there's no chat in the stream. That's very odd. Check that and try to.
That's why there's nothing in there. Huh.
Yeah, I was like, man, nobody's enjoying this. Wow, that stinks. That's very weird. We'll try to see. I don't know if I can fix that. I don't even know if I can fix it. But the "Do I amuse you" scene, we've already kind of talked about it briefly. Um, what? So there's a lot of uh, there's a little bit of consternation about this scene and how it really happened. Whether it was something that was unscripted and nobody knew what was going to happen except Liotta and Pesci, or Liotta, Pesci, and Scorsese, and everybody else was in the dark. The one thing that I hear and that that all of the accounts agree on, this is something that actually happened to Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci, growing
Yes,
up
I read that.
uh, in New York, knew some unsavory sort of people, and he had this happen. He was working as a waiter, and one of the more unsavory characters in the neighborhood was there, and he said something to him about, you're a funny guy. And this guy dressed him down in very much the same manner that Tommy DeVito starts moving in on Henry Hill. I don't know the truth, and I don't know, I don't know what's right, what's wrong about any of this, but it's a great scene. Like, it's just a great scene.
That scene made Pesci's performance. Like, I don't think it's as good a performance for Joe Pesci or overall the movie without that scene. It's great. And then to read, I read the same thing that you're talking about, where it was actually not totally improvised, but it wasn't part of the original script, because he brought up this bit of history, of his own history, when he was working as a waiter, and it was an impromptu filmed scene, and a lot of it was improv, is how I read it. And if that's how it went down, I mean, that makes it even more amazing. So yeah, it's a great scene. It's it really kind of introduces you to his character, and kind of shows you how much of a nut Tommy is. And he's a very likable guy, but he's also a really scary guy.
Yeah, definitely. What I love about it is that it's all a ruse through the whole thing. And I love the fun they have at the end of that, after Henry kind of calls him on it, and he's like, get out of here. And he's like, I almost had him. And then they start laughing at Henry Hill. But the restaurant owner comes over, and they have that whole conversation. He bashes him over the head with the bottle and all that kind of stuff. And Henry Hill keeps going. Ray Liotta, who we'll talk about in a few minutes, but Ray Liotta comes back and, you're a really funny guy. Then it becomes a joke. Very, very much what men would do with each other. Like, now we have something that is the shared experience between us, and it's great. I think the Billy Batts information. What's up, Jordan? Jordan did find his way in. He just jumped over to YouTube. YouTube seemed to be working a little better for me. What's up, Jordan? We're talking about Goodfellas. What are your thoughts on this incredible movie? I love that we start before we know who Billy Batts is or what's going on. The movie starts with Billy Batts' murder. And it is also the central point where everything changes. It is the fulcrum on which the movie because everything is going up until we get to Billy Batts' murder, and then it starts going down. That is the fulcrum on which this movie is built. And Scorsese recognizes that, and so he takes it and takes this very seminal moment in the film and sticks it right in the beginning, and shows the cognitive dissonance between this world and what is real, because you have this horrific thing happen on screen in front of you, where they take the knife and they stab him, and Jimmy shoots him 3 or 4 times, and you get this bright rags to riches music coming over, Ray Liotta slamming the trunk, and as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And there's this cognitive dissonance of, we've just seen something absolutely terrible, and the first thing we hear is, I always wanted this life, and it's rags to riches, and it's bubbly, and it's exciting. It's very well done. Those memorable sort of scenes. What other scenes do you stick out in your mind other than those couple?
Well, before I go to that, speaking of the intro, I remember looking at this when viewing it over this last couple of weeks. I watched it twice, but the first time when I started it, and I remember I was thinking, as the introduction with the credits, it's the sound of vehicles passing, rapid pass, almost like if it's racing or something. It's motion going across. You hear vehicles screaming by, and then that opening scene where the camera goes to an actual picture is of Henry's car, and then you see the three in the back, and they're speeding down this highway at night in the car, and it looks like just three friends. If you didn't know you're sitting down to watch a gangster movie, it's almost like this is like has to do something like race car driving. That's the kind of feel that you get from the entry credits and that opening scene until they hear the noise, and you're not sure what the noise is at that point. And they get out, they go around the back, and they open the trunk, and there's a guy in there, and that's just like, okay, oh wait, maybe this isn't what I'm being led to believe. Most people going and watching this movie, they know what it is. But sure. I just remember thinking how that's kind of a little bit of a twist that Scorsese had to have intentionally done there right at the beginning, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Billy Batts, the character of Billy Batts is played by Frank Vincent. Frank Vincent and Joe Pesci have a long storied history together. One of the more famous scenes in Goodfellas is this confrontation between them. The go home and get your shine box.
Mm-hmm.
They will also be have probably the most famous scene in Casino is the two of them. When Pesci's character is killed in Casino, it is Frank Vincent doing that. So he gets his comeback. But they were a comedy duo together. Like they used to do vaudeville kind of stand-up together. Vincent and Pesci did. So these guys know each other very well. The Billy Batts scene there in the Sweet Lounge is so important to the movie. It tries to tell you in the beginning of the movie. It shows you the what is going to happen. It happens in the middle of the movie, and there's voiceover there that if you're listening carefully, Henry Hill, Ray Liotta in the voiceover tells you that this is the most important thing that's ever going to happen to Tommy DeVito. That they have killed a made man, and that's where things are going to go wrong. It's all spelled out. You just don't. You've been on this upward trend all the way through the movie up to this point, and so you don't see it coming, despite the fact that it's been shown to you. And I attribute that so much to what I think really makes this film great, and that's Martin Scorsese.
Yeah,
I'm not I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that I love everything Scorsese does. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I try. I get what he's doing. I like what he's doing, but I don't think that he's ever. I think this is the best film he ever made, at least to date, that I've seen. In anyone else's hands, this script and this group of actors, you don't have to change anything else but the director here, and this movie doesn't work. Scorsese is what makes this movie what it is, and just the not little things, they're actually huge things that that give this movie its identity, that come from him. The Steadicam shot through the Copa, when he takes Karen out, they go through the back entrance of the Copa. There is this,
Yes.
3.5 or 4 minute Steadicam shot following them through the back entrance and through the kitchen.
Yep, that's one of my favorite scenes.
Nobody does that way. Lots of people will try to do that after this movie, but nobody in 1989, 1990 accomplishes their vision that way. They would do any number of other things to show Henry's ability to get into the packed house and at the Copa.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't do it that way. And it's a great shot. I love the story. Who is remind me who the comedian is? The
one-liner guy. I don't recall.
Henny Youngman.
Youngman. There you go. Yeah, it's about the same time.
So Henny Youngman caused them to. They lost a take on this. They did the whole thing. Henny Youngman is what ends that shot. They did the whole thing up to that. Henny Youngman could not remember his lines on one of the takes. So they did this whole thing, whole setup, walked all the way through, and Henny Youngman forgot his lines. And so they had to redo it. They had to redo the whole thing.
That's funny.
And in movie world, that's probably like a whole day of set and getting ready. But it shows you something about Henry. It shows you something about Karen and what seduces her into this lifestyle with Henry. Mark Yamaguchi checking in from Houston. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Mark.
Talking about some Goodfellas. Another way that I think Scorsese puts his fingerprint onto this film in a way nobody else would have done is the use of music. If you don't pay attention, you don't realize how important music is to this particular film, but it is all the way through. It's like a radio station playing all the way through. And my understanding is, as Pileggi and Scorsese are writing the script, Scorsese is writing down into the script where this song, what song he's going to use here. The shot of De Niro, older De Niro, after the Lufthansa heist at the bar, when he is making up his mind that he's gonna kill Maury. He's smoking, standing at the bar, and Cream, Sunshine of Your Love from Cream comes on. Apparently, according to Pileggi, he wrote that into the script as they're writing the script. He said, he turned to Pileggi and said, write Cream into the script. And he goes, what does that mean? And he goes, I'll know what it means. Just write it. That's incredible to have that kind of mind. And the way the music takes you through, it starts out like we just talked about with Rags to Riches, a Tony Bennett sort of standard song for the era, very light, very bubbly, very, I don't know, just airy. And we finish with another standard from the same era, but with a completely different take on it, as we hear My Way, but not from Frank Sinatra at the end of the film. It is instead, who is it? Sid and Nancy Sid and Sex Pistols.
Sex Pistols, yes.
Yeah. And that happens very gently throughout the movie. There is fun, light, and bubbly. The Copacabana scene we were just talking about, where they're moving through the back, is he's using, I think it's the Shondells, Then He Kissed Me. Perfect song.
Yes.
Perfect song for that moment. It carries all the way. If you've never paid attention, some people have it. I know there are some people that are like, oh, never thought about the music in Goodfellas. Well, you may not have, but Martin Scorsese did. And that music is so much of what it does not have a traditional score, an instrumental score that carries through. It is instead scored by these random musical cues that sort of run all the way through the movie. And the fact that he wrote it into the script as he's writing
it,
the script is incredible. Like nobody's mind works like that when they write scripts. Another great thing about this movie, I don't think anybody will disagree. Everyone in this movie is spot on. Everyone is absolutely exactly who needs to be there, and they do a great job. De Niro, who has a long history with Scorsese even before this, will go on to have more movies with Scorsese after this. De Niro is incredible in this movie. I think that the way that they age him through the movie, look, he's not 28 or 29 in the beginning of the movie.
No.
I get that. He's like late 40s. But they do such a great job of gradually aging him. When we get toward the end and he's got the big bug-eye glasses on and the gray slick back hair, and they just do a great, he does a great job. Apparently he was very nervous about getting this character, Jimmy Conway, who is based on a gangster named Jimmy the Gent, Jimmy Burke, just right. He would call Henry Hill 6 to 7 times a day to ask him questions about, like, how would he use ketchup? If you ever, the scene where they're sitting in Tommy's mother's dining room or kitchen, where they got Billy Bats out in the trunk of the car.
That whole scene was improvised, by the way.
Jimmy Conway, Robert De Niro's Jimmy Conway, rolls the ketchup bottle to get the ketchup out. He doesn't bang it. He doesn't, shake it. He rolls it. He had to call Henry Hill and say, how would Jimmy have gotten ketchup out of a bottle? Because he wanted to be that sure that he was doing it right. De Niro just does an incredible job in this movie. And it's a good thing because we're getting close to De Niro's turn here. De Niro makes a turn in his career where he starts just making movies for money. And some of them are good. Like you get Meet the Parents and you get some good movies, but most of them are not. I sat down and watched Analyze This for the first time. It's not a good movie. I love Billy Crystal and I love Robert De Niro. It's still not a good movie. I can't believe it got a sequel. It got a
sequel.
Yeah, it's not a good movie. But he got paid for it. And this is just before that turn is starting to happen. Everything De Niro had done before this, with maybe the exception of Midnight Run, was Oscar-worthy sort of stuff. And this is the turn where he starts making movies, just I need money in the bank. I need to do the things I want to do. And he's done that. He's owns real estate all over New York, apparently, and some of that kind of stuff. So he did what he wanted to do. Great for him. But this is just before that turn starts. Anything else about De Niro or anything stand out about De Niro's performance for you?
Just how kind of he develops as that greed kind of overtakes him after the big heist, and he's calculating. And I thought it was really interesting how that develops, where at the beginning he's a role model and a friend, someone that you think Henry can really count on, and they're close, right? Like where he turns into, ultimately he's the guy that Henry fears probably more than anybody. And that arc where he goes from, the guy that you could trust the most to the guy that's really, you have to turn on because it's him or you. I thought that was a well done. The scene where Karen goes to see him without Henry knowing, and he's like, hey, I've got some Dior dresses. Why don't you go pick out a couple for yourself? They're around the corner. She had started to head upstairs to his typical place, and she's like, no, come around here, around the corner. And she kind of catches on, like she's in that whole thing where she just in fear rushes off in the Volvo, her mom's Volvo. Don't ask me why I remember it's a Volvo, but I like that.
Is Jimmy gonna have Karen killed there?
That's a question that you don't know, and you don't know for sure. You kind of think so though, because I asked myself that question. I was like, was he really trying to kill her, or were there really some just stashed back there, out of the way? But the way he stands there looking upset as she drives off, he doesn't look puzzled. He doesn't look like, crazy lady, what are you doing? Why that reaction? He looks upset. And that's what makes me think that, yeah, maybe he was going to have her, if not, killed, at least detained. Some sort of plan was he was developing to get to Henry. Something bad was going to happen. And I made up my mind after watching that scene the second time around, watching it in this last couple of weeks, because I didn't know up until the second time watching it. And I even rewinded it and watched it a third time. As soon as the scene finished, that question popped in my head, that exact question. Was he really going to kill her? And I rewinded it to watch it again. And the look on his face as he stood there watching her drive away is what made me decide, yeah, he was going to kill her. Something bad was going to happen to Karen if she goes in there.
I love movies that don't answer every question.
Mm-hmm.
I love movies that leave you with some room to talk about and think about things. I think one of the problems that we have too often in Hollywood now is that everybody needs a backstory. Everybody does not need a backstory. Some guys can just be bad guys. And some good guys can just be good guys. We don't need to know. I say that. Wicked is the most popular thing in the world right now, and it is nothing but a backstory of Wizard of Oz. For so many of us. But in general, one of the things that makes the Joker great in Dark Knight is that we don't know why he is the way he is, and we don't need to. He is who he is, and that's great. But I love that question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what about you? Answer the question yourself.
I tend to agree with you. I think the telling thing is his reaction when she does not follow his directions. But I could make a pretty solid argument the other way too. And I love that. I love that it's open to interpretation and we don't really know. The point of the scene is not whether Jimmy's going to have Karen or whacked or not. It is that Henry's paranoia has now fed into Karen. He's been paranoid for a while, and I think the scene just before that is all about you're just being paranoid. And now she's starting to pick that up too, and that's going to be important going into the next few minutes, the next 20 minutes or so of the movie. That paranoia is going to need to be there for this to carry on. So that's the point of the scene. It doesn't really matter whether he is or isn't. The fact that she's afraid of Jimmy, a person she's never been afraid of before, is the point. But it is odd. I've got some dresses for you, and it's a very odd way for him to act with her anyway. So yeah, I mean, if you made me lay a bet one way or the other, I would say, yeah, it's easier. He's in that mode at that point. The turning point for Jimmy's character is not is Tommy. When they whack Tommy, I think he just kind of gives up. Any connection he has to anybody is sort of severed when he is so excited for Tommy to be made, and then when he gets the phone call, they're in the phone booth. Great scene, great job by De Niro.
Yes.
And I think that's what breaks Jimmy. I think that's what kind of changes things. Mark Yamaguchi says, you want to comment on the T. Lawrence hit?
Trevor
My apologies for
Lawrence.
the question.
Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville, Houston game.
Dirty hit. Taught all your life. You're taught all your life on defense. All my life in football, and I'm older than that guy. When a quarterback slides, you have to do everything you can to not make contact with them, and certainly not around the head or neck. He knew better. It is a bang-bang thing, and I totally understand. But it's dirty. As soon as I saw it, I said he's going to get suspended and should be for some time.
So
it's funny. I was trying to think of who T. Lawrence was in the Goodfellas. In Goodfellas, because I was like,
yeah,
what guy did they hit that's T. Lawrence? I don't remember that. No.
So I'll opine on that real quick, and then we'll move back on subject. But I agree with you. It's a bang bang thing. I agree with you. He should be suspended. I don't disagree that it's a dirty hit. I do sympathize with him a little bit, though, where it's like it's hard to avoid hits like these in this game is when it's so fast and you're playing 100 miles an hour and the competitiveness. But I don't disagree at all when you say he should know better. I don't agree with a lot of the people going after this guy and going after him as harshly and criticizing his character off the field and other things about his life and everything. I don't agree with any of that at all. Is he a horrible person for what he did? I wouldn't say that at all.
Nope. Was
it a bad hit?
Let the moment get it, get away with it. And the thing that makes it dirty to me, I think Lawrence slid a little late. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes very hard to determine what you would do as a defensive player in that position. The thing that makes it dirty to me is the forearm. Because even if you didn't have time to stop launching yourself that direction for that hit, you did have time to minimize contact. And instead, you raise your forearm to the helmet to maximize contact. And look, I'm not saying he did that on purpose. It happens in the moment.
That's how it happened. Yep.
Mm-hmm. But no, I think the penalty is warranted. The suspension is warranted. It was the forearm for me, because I do think Lawrence slides a little late, and I do not like the gamesmanship that has been happening in the game lately with quarterbacks stepping out of bounds or sliding late or pretending to slide. One of the most dangerous things that happened in football happened 2 years ago when Kenny Pickett was playing in college football for Pitt, and he faked a slide. It was one of the most dangerous things that happened in football.
Wow.
Because it immediately takes everybody and goes, well, wait, are they going to slide or not? And it changes that moment in a lot of people's minds. So yeah, that's our thoughts on it. Not Goodfellas related, but we're always happy to talk about football. We will always talk.
Yes.
De Niro is where we left off. Pesci. Let's talk about Joe Pesci. He wins an Oscar for this. He plays Tommy DeVito, based on Tommy DeSimone. And he is incredible. Like, I realize that this is what Pesci is, and this is what Pesci does really well, and we know that, but just an incredible performance all the way around. We've already talked about Do I Amuse You and Billy Bats and that scene. So much power and so much to be worried about in such a small package, which almost seems to make him more dangerous. Seems to make you worry about him even more.
Yeah, I mean, the way he kills Spider, that whole thing.
Doesn't care. Care. shoots
It's like,
Spider, and everybody else at the table is like,
yeah,
"What are you
you're gonna.
doing?" And he goes, "What do you want me to do? I'm a good shot. What do you
I'm a
want me
good
to
shot. I'm a good shot. You're gonna dig the hole. I'll dig the hole. It's not the first
do?"
hole I dug. What the heck? Like it's just like, wow, this guy. He's you don't want to get on his bad side. And poor Spider, he thought, and the funny thing is Jimmy encouraged him. Jimmy encouraged him. He said, "That's right. Stand up for yourself." He gave him money. He said, "This is for you." He's like, and then he looks over at Tommy, and he's like, "You're gonna let him get away with that?"
Yeah. Well, because up to that moment, it's all very much what guys will do to one another. Like, I'm going to give you a hard time, and you're going to give me a hard time, and all of that is fun and games. It's not fun and games when Tommy pulls out his gun with no warning and just blows him away.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting about that is Henry and Tommy start out in this movie as the Spiders. They are the young guys,
yes,
that are taken under the wings of these older guys and develop. And Henry and Tommy have no desire whatsoever to do that with Spider. He is expendable as far as they're concerned, not the next group to bring up. And I think that's a low-key sort of message of the movie. I think it all ties into the central message, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But I think that's a low-key message of the movie, is that even if you find this world okay, there is a honorable way that you can live in this sort of organized crime world, and then there's another way, and these guys are that way. So no matter what you think of organized crime, it's bad, it's wrong, and it destroys people's lives. But there's an honorable Godfather, Marlon Brando sort of way of doing things. That's not who these guys are. They are not the ones that are going to bring the Spiders of the world under their wing and teach them and show them and bust on them and give them a hard time, sure, and accidentally shoot them in the foot being stupid, sure, but still bring them along. No. They're just going to kill him. They're just going to get rid of him because he insulted them because he didn't respect them. And
yeah,
there's another one of your Sopranos guys, by the way, Michael Imperioli.
Yeah, Michael Imperioli, yeah, Christopher Moltisanti. And I'm sure this part had a big, had a big influence on him getting that role. Yeah, on that note, where you're saying that the whole what's the word, where you're not fantasizing but romanticizing this lifestyle. Henry even kind of lightens it, where he explains what it is. He says that's all this is, that people don't understand, that we were just for what was it, the police for people that can't go to the police, or something like that. And that, he goes, that's all this is. And I'm like thinking to myself, and I'm like, no. That's not what that is at all. Like, you're lying to yourself.
Yes, there's a serious amount of cognitive dissonance in Henry Hill in himself, because he says things like that. We were just the police for people who couldn't go to the police. But then he talks about the restaurant owner that they strong arm into, getting connected to Polly, and now he had Polly as a partner, and that meant he had to pay Polly, and no matter what went wrong, pay me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so and they absolutely destroy that guy's business and his life, and then burn down his bar.
Just that happens in The Sopranos too. There's a lot of influence. Money. Yep.
Yeah. Pesci does an incredible job. I do think it's really funny that this and Harry happened in the same year. Like, it is the same Joe Pesci that is robbing Kevin McAllister um, that is killing Spider. Like this is the same guy in the same year and the same time. Talk a little bit about Ray Liotta. Ray Liotta is this was the best thing that ever happened to Ray Liotta.
Besides Cocaine Bear?
This is the best thing that ever happened.
Yes.
This made Ray Liotta a star. He dined out on this for the rest of his life. The career he had post Goodfellas is simply because he was Henry Hill and did a great job. Look, I'm not taking anything away from him. He took his opportunity. We'll talk about how he got that opportunity in a few minutes, but he took his opportunity and he went toe to toe with De Niro and Pesci and Servino, and he fits. He fits right in. He is throwing the same speed as them. He is not a weak point in the film at all. If anything, he is strengthened by those around him, but he will never be this good in anything again. I can't think of anything I've seen him in. Hannibal. No, I can't think of anything I've seen him in that I liked him in. Post Goodfellas, he had a great career. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but he had a great career. But I just don't think he was ever topped what he did as Henry Hill in Goodfellas.
No.
Ray Liotta.
Yeah, that's one of those where, you know, you're thankful he ended up with the role, and it really did, it springboarded his career and made his career really fantastic job.
We'll talk a little later about some of the people who could have ended up with that role.
Some names we've mentioned before.
I will just say now, I'm glad Ray Liotta got it.
Yes,
I think Ray Liotta was the right choice. The other thing I love, and I've alluded to this before, we've talked about this movie on our show, and you and I have talked about it a bunch. We like this movie. I love the rise and fall aspect of the story. And I think a lot of people don't think of that when they think of Goodfellas. But this story is about a rise and fall. And the fall is just as important as the rise. I talked about my roommate in college or after college who loved this movie for all the wrong reasons. I think there's a lot of people out there that do that with not just this movie, but several. And I think this is the part I've mentioned on this show before. Fight Club, The Joker, Goodfellas, even Godfather, the first Godfather to a point. They take a person and they try to show you this person or this lifestyle as a really terrible thing. And for some reason, a certain group of people walk out of the film and idolize and make a hero out of this sort of lifestyle or this person. Michael Corleone is not a good person. He is evil. He is a bad person. Everything that happens in Fight Club, the whole point is that guy's mentally ill. He's deranged. The Joker, same thing.
Yeah.
This guy is mentally ill. He is deranged. And in this, it's about a lifestyle. And the lifestyle is seductive, but it is ultimately empty. And Scorsese knew it, and his point in making the film was more the back half of this film than the front half of this film. I got a quote here from Rolling Stone by Martin Scorsese. I wanted people to get infuriated by it. I wanted to seduce everyone into the movie and into the style, and then just take them apart with it. The point of the film is not that first part that frat boys love. The point of the movie is the second part and what all of that leads to. Goodfellas is about the rise and fall of Henry Hill. And to make this sort of lifestyle, or Tommy DeVito or Henry Hill or any of this heroic or good or something you aspire to be. I want to be a tough guy like Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito winds up shot in the head and buried in a hole in the ground somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the guy you want to be like, have better aspirations for yourself.
Yeah.
I love this movie for what it does, and at the same time, hate what some people do with this movie. They what word did you use earlier? You used the perfect word for it. Yeah, they romanticize this lifestyle, and that's not the point. The point is that it's wrong. It's bad. I love that Todd Phillips, with the Joker sequel, which I still have not yet gone back and watched, attempted to force his audience into that place. With from my understanding, with the new Joker, he attempted to force his audience that loved Arthur Fleck and romanticized the Joker into this place where he just absolutely tears that character down. And Scorsese is doing that here in these two different acts of Goodfellas. But I love that. I think what makes this movie great is it does not pull any punches on either the rise or the fall of this sort of lifestyle. It makes it be what it is. When there are some moments when they're sitting in the courtroom, and he has to point out Paulie, and he has to point out Jimmy, that should hurt. That should be rough. When Paulie hands him the money and says, I have to turn my back on you.
I got to turn my back on you. Yep.
That should hurt. That should be, you should understand what that means. Paul is a guy that has taken this kid in from the time he was 13 years old and watched over him, raised him, took care of him, gave him the life he's had up to this point. The fact that he has to turn away from that. You see Henry Hill's dad 3 times. You see him when he's beating the heck out of him, right there at the beginning of the movie when he's living at home. You see him when he first gets pinched and goes to court. He's sitting behind him. And I think you see him one more time in another sort of situation. But Henry Hill's dad means nothing. Paulie means something. And the fact that he has to turn away or be turned away from all of that should mean something.
You think Henry, in that moment, shows a little bit of, I don't know, it's ungratefulness is the word, or entitlement is the word, but it's kind of in between the two, because it kind of made me think about it a little bit, or was a little off-putting to me in that scene where he says $3,200. That's all he gave me, a lifetime of service, and I get $3,200, not even enough to pay for the coffin. And I was like, did you really expect anything more than that? Like I would think that he would be, I know he was hoping that he would, forgive him and embrace him, but you knew that wasn't going to happen.
He gave you $3,200 and allowed you to live. He made it very clear to you after you both came out of prison that if you got tied up in this stuff and he could be connected to it in any way, it would send him to prison for the rest of his life, and he didn't want that. So he allowed you to live, bud. He gave you $3,200. He gave you every dime in his pocket, and he allowed you to walk out of the place. He gave you a lot more than $3,200. You should be thinking more about the coffin that you could have wound up in instead of how to pay for the coffin you could have wound up in. I agree. I never thought about that before, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a little bit of, but that's where Henry is by that point of the film. Is he is in it for him. Jimmy's same way. Like Jimmy is going to have Henry whacked. He's going to have probably Karen whacked. He's gonna, kill everybody he can to keep as much of the money that he can. Maury. Maury is such an interesting
Maury.
character in this
Mhm.
show.
Great
He
character.
annoys the heck out of me just like he does Jimmy. And so I fully understand when they finally kill him why he does it. But it also just shows you that nobody is safe. Because Maury has been around since the beginning of the movie. When they go in and he's got the wig commercial playing on that, which is a great bit.
Falling into the pool.
Yeah. It's very strange to watch Casino and see that actor as one of the big bosses that sends De Niro out to Vegas. Same actor that plays Maury is one of the high up bosses. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. De Niro's supposed to be kicking his butt all the time. How that's supposed to work. Okay, no movie is perfect. We've had this segment on our show for a long time. What are the things that you would change? I know there's one thing that you have had on dialed up for this for over 2 weeks.
Oh yeah,
we talked about it 2 weeks ago. What's something you would change?
Mark Yamaguchi signing off, taking off. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining us, Mark. All right, so there's two things, and they're both at the end. And the one you're talking about, and then the other thing that happens just before it. The whole ending sequence that starts off the morning with the helicopters. I like what Scorsese does there. I like the telling of the story of the day. I don't like the way it's intentionally done this way, but I could have done without it personally. The way it feels rushed. Everything speeds up. Henry Hill's narration speeds up. Everything is there. I mean, there's points in the narration of the day where it's almost like he's rambling. He's not even breathing as he's just going from sentence to sentence. And I think they're trying to portray a sense of urgency, a sense of imminent doom or something. It's setting up something, but I just could have done without that. I think the fact that there's the helicopters and him wondering about that, and maybe it would have been a little bit better served to kind of slow things down a little bit. I mean, they're having a family gathering. They do the thing about he's making the spaghetti and the meat sauce, and he has his brother stirring the sauce, and they're getting ready for their next the babysitter's going to take a shipment out to the airport. Maybe it's a time to kind of slow down but be a little bit nervous, but it's more like a frenzy. And I didn't quite sit well with me. I didn't quite enjoy the way that was done. So that's number one.
So on that particular one, I think I think he's really trying to generate the mindset of Henry, who is totally coked out.
Yes.
Who is coked to the gills. And that's why you get sort of that frantic pace. It's there in everything. You're right. The narration speeds up, the editing and the cuts speed up, everything speeds up. And I think that's on purpose.
No, it definitely is
meant to simulate or generate sort of that feeling. The other thing I would say is Henry, if you've got a busy day, maybe you let somebody else make the sauce. Maybe you take one thing off your plate. And let somebody else do the sauce for the meal that night.
Perhaps go shopping in the middle of it.
Perhaps you shouldn't be cutting cocaine and making the sauce for your family the same day. At least, what if you forget to wash your hands? There's so many problems. Let somebody else do the sauce. Let your mom, let your sister, let somebody else do the sauce.
Yeah. It's just too much for me. Let's go to your mom's house and drop off the guns. All right, let's go back and pick them up. I get what they were doing, but it didn't work so much for me.
Sure.
But still okay. I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with the next part. The next one really bothered me.
All right,
When
let's hear it.
when Henry Hill breaks the third wall, he's doing his narration, he's in the court, he's on the witness stand, you know, he's pointed out Jimmy and he's pointed out Paulie, and then all of a sudden he breaks the third wall and talks directly to the camera, directly to the audience. He stands up, walks out of the witness stand and just out into the middle of the courtroom with the other characters still in the background, still discussing whatever it is they're doing, carrying on as if he's not doing what he's doing to the audience. And it just, I sat there going, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? At no point in this movie do you do anything close to this. And it just totally just, you took me out of a story that I'm involved in, I'm inside of, I'm seeing the different things, but I am invested in this story and I am in it. And then all of a sudden you just very abruptly, boom, push me out. And now I'm watching a movie where you're breaking the third wall and talking to me as an audience, rather than telling me a story. It just did not work for me at all. I did not like it. I could totally have done without that.
Yeah, you mentioned this a few weeks ago. You mentioned this a couple of weeks ago as we were getting ready for Goodfellas. You mentioned that you had a big problem with this, and so when I watched it, I had this in mind. I think the point they're trying to make, and part of it is murky, and so this creates part of your problem with it. I think what they're trying to signal to you, what Scorsese specifically is trying to signal to you, is this is him telling the story of all of this on the stand. This is his testimony all the way through. But it's not done very well to pick that up. Mm-mm. And I think ultimately you're right. Like, we didn't need it. It wasn't important. It was a choice. I just don't understand the choice. And I don't know that it does whatever they're trying to do, because it does it in such a almost ham-fisted sort of way, if that's what he was going for. You know, there are other ways you could do that. You could have you could have Ray Liotta grow a beard and cut to him on the witness stand talking to a lawyer, and then we get that, just have that merge right into that, and we get that in a different way. So it's a choice. It's a bold choice, and I think you're right. I think it kind of falls flat. I don't think it works. Mine is similar, actually. One of the things that I would change. Mm-hmm. There is a relative, there's about 5 of them, freeze frame early in the movie. The first one is when he slams the trunk before we get the title sequence, the title card, the Goodfellas title card. Mm-hmm. There's a freeze frame. There are also freeze frames throughout his childhood. And then they just disappear. Mm-hmm. I understand what he's doing with them. They are moments where Henry makes a choice that is sinking him deeper into this lifestyle. But that doesn't stop when he becomes an adult. He still makes choices that lead him deeper into this lifestyle. So either you continue this storytelling gimmick that you've used in the first 20 minutes, or you just don't do it at all. It doesn't make sense to have it and then it just disappears. Like it's an adolescence thing. Like once he hit puberty, he stopped freeze framing in his mind. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't particularly like it. I know it's a big part of the film that a lot of people do enjoy, because it calls attention to, some of those moments when he's getting beat by his dad, or the postman getting his head shoved in the oven. Those are 2 of those freeze frames that come up. And it's still a great film. I'm not saying, it doesn't work. That choice doesn't work for me. They're carried all the way through, or don't use it at all. And it's, they're okay. Like, these are small things. These are nitpicky kind of things that we're talking about. It's a great movie, but I think
Yeah.
you're right. I'm not sure breaking the fourth wall, and I'm not sure the freeze frames work. Unless we're doing something earlier, unless we're carrying it through the whole narrative somehow, and I don't pick that up from either of these. Anything else you'd change?
No, those are the main two things. Everything else, I thought. I mean, it's a classic movie. It's a
It
great
is.
movie. Great.
So we'll talk about
performances.
how it could have been different. It was always going to be Scorsese. This was always Scorsese's project. He wrote the screenplay on it with Nicholas Pileggi's help, based on his book, Wise Guy, or Wise Guys. So that's not going to have been different, but there was a lot of people that they thought of to play Henry Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Tom Cruise.
No,
He had worked with Scorsese on Scorsese's previous picture, The Color of Money. And there was some talk maybe of Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is not an Italian mobster.
no, not even partially Italian.
No.
Irish Italian. No.
Sean Penn. And right now we look at it and we're going like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe Sean Penn would have been maybe so. Remember, this is Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Sean Penn.
Sean Penn.
Like, this is that guy that they were, and I mean, he could have done it and it would have been something. It wouldn't have been what we got, but it would have been something. Alec Baldwin, which would have been maybe an interesting choice. It would be very funny to me to see a young Alec Baldwin and a young Andy Garcia playing young mobsters at the same time on the screen, because in their younger years, I don't get them confused now, but in their younger years, they were interchangeable to me, Alec Baldwin and Andy Garcia.
I could see that. Yeah.
There is a guy that I think does fit a lot of, and remember, like, I'm going to say this name and people are going to go, no way, but it's because you're thinking about him now and not then. There's a kid named Nicholas Coppola who could not go by his name Coppola because that was his uncle's name. So he goes by Nicholas Cage. Nicholas Cage was a guy they thought of for Henry Hill. I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be Leota, but I'd be interested to see a Nick Cage before he went insane, because, by the way, something happened right around the face-off Snake Eyes time, and Nick Cage's mind just broke. And that's okay. He's a very, very fun guy, and all of those kind of things. But somewhere right around there, something broke. But in this time, in the late 80s, early 90s, and this is like Raising Arizona Nick Cage. This is like very young Nick Cage. I think he's Italian. I mean, he's Coppola, so he's Italian. I think this could have been interesting. I don't know.
That could have worked. Yeah.
He brings something very different than Ray Liotta. I mean, very, very different. I don't know if I want to hear 2.5 hours of voiceover from Nick Cage. I don't know. I don't know if it works, but I'd be interested in seeing what it looks like.
I could see that kind of quirky awkwardness, but I'd be interested in seeing it. Yeah, that's funny. That's interesting for sure.
Did you see any other names connected to Henry Hill?
No, I didn't. I didn't even see the Nicolas Cage. I saw all the other guys you mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
For Jimmy Conway, John Malkovich was thought for a while. And then Pacino was originally approached before De Niro. Pacino turned down the role because he did not want to take too many mobster roles. He was worried about getting typecast as a gangster. So instead of doing Jimmy Conway in Goodfellas, he took the quintessential, dare I say, the cartoon of mobsters. He's big. Instead of doing this movie, he turns down this movie to do Big Boy Caprice in Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy, which is a cartoon of the mob. He is the leader of the cartoon mob in Dick Tracy. He turned this down because he didn't want to be typecast as a mobster, and instead played the apotheosis of mobsters.
Fired his agent. Wow.
And by the way, Dick Tracy, I know it's not a good movie. I love that movie. No, I was the right age when it hit. I thought it was great. I love Dick Tracy, even though I recognize it's not a good movie. And I think Pacino does a great job in it, but I just think it's very funny that he won't do Jimmy Conway because he doesn't want to be a mobster. And so then he's Big Boy, which is like the mobster of I want Dick Tracy dead. Karen, the folks they had to play Karen. Did you have any other Jimmy Conways?
No.
Okay. Karen, Lorraine Bracco ultimately, but it could have been Ellen Barkin, which, I don't know. Ellen Barkin doesn't do anything for me one way or the other. I like Lorraine Bracco. I think she did a great job, and I wouldn't change that for Ellen Barkin. Nah.
No. Now the next one that I think you're gonna say I would have been interested to see.
Oh, I doubt it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Madonna's agent lobbied really hard for Madonna to be Karen Hill. And what doesn't work about that, look, Madonna is a cartoon character now, if you've seen her, and all of that. But let's be fair, right around this time, she was an incredible artist, and she was a pretty solid actress at this time. The problem here is she's just a bit too glamorous for Karen to me. Like, I think she could have done it, but the platinum blonde hair, like they would have had to do something. Like she would have had to disappear in some way into this character that was not on brand for her at the time.
Yeah, she would have had to go to her brunette. Wasn't she originally a brunette, Madonna?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So she had to go back to her roots, like literal.
Right. She also was in Dick Tracy, by the way.
Yes.
Instead of this movie, and was able to keep the Madonna-esque character, the sort of brand that she had as Madonna, and that worked out much better for her. That was a much better sort of role for her, because she really would have had to give up something that made Madonna at that time Madonna to kind of lose herself in this role, and I don't think it works. I don't. I think she could have done it, but I just don't think she should have done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree, but I'd be curious to see Madonna play Karen. I think she could pull off the introduction part where she's, she gets seduced by Henry and the lifestyle. But where I think she'd really nail it is Karen enjoying the life.
Yes.
And Karen being, Mrs. Henry Hill, big shot.
However,
and I think she could have really, really nailed that.
However, I think Madonna has just too much crazy in her to just be banging on the doorbells down at the bottom and calling the superintendent. Like, she's going to find a way up to that apartment and take care of the problem herself. Like, Madonna has enough crazy in her that she's not going to allow that. Like, Madonna pulls the trigger when she wakes her husband up with the gun in his face. Like Madonna's crazy enough that's the end of that.
Yeah. You're Ray Liotta's a lot more scared if he wakes up and he sees Madonna hovering over him with the gun in his face. Yeah.
As we all would be. I may have just given myself nightmares.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm really glad that Lorraine Bracco gets the part. You know, Scorsese, she didn't even have to audition for it because she had auditioned for a prior a film for Scorsese, and he liked her and remembered her. But without this role, I'm not sure we get Dr. Melfi as Dr. Melfi in The Sopranos, and absolutely no one else could have played Dr. Melfi in The Sopranos than Lorraine Bracco.
For sure. I did not mention, I promised we would get to it, how Ray Liotta got the part. Ray Liotta stalked Martin Scorsese for this part. The story goes that he saw Scorsese after they started working on the script. He knew about it. He was a fan of the project. And so he went and found Scorsese at a party, tapped him on the shoulder and said, I really want to talk to you about that. And Scorsese did what I'm sure tons of directors have to do in Hollywood all the time. And like, sure, kid, whatever. You know, have your people call my people and we'll set something up, with no intention of giving this kid the part. But he was persistent. And finally, Scorsese said, all right, I'll take a look. And once he took a look, he said, hey, this might work. This guy might be good. But Liotta lobbied hard for this part and wanted this part and kind of stalked Scorsese to get this part. And good on him, because it made his career.
Yeah.
It was the part that made Ray Liotta Ray Liotta.
Sometimes you got to go get it. Yep. And that's what he did.
Any other? What might have been different about this film stuff for you?
I saw the Liotta stuff. I don't remember seeing any other ones than the ones you've already talked about. I don't think anyone was ever considered for Tommy other than Joe Pesci.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
I think he was Tommy from day one, from what I read. I didn't see anything else. I did see something interesting that after Goodfellas, Pesci, his success there led him to a short music career that I had no idea even existed.
Oh, you've never heard Wise Guy?
No, I did not know this.
Oh, you're in. He does. So hey, I mean, he had a short musical career before he got into acting. There's actually an album out there called Little Joe Can Sing or something like that that he did before he got into the vaudeville and then into the movies. But yes, he had an album. I believe it's an album that he released.
A whole album.
But there's a music video called Wise Guy out there that is a rap done by Joe Pesci as Tommy DeVito, basically rapping about being a gangster, called, I believe, Wise Guy. You must go watch. It is hilarious.
I'm going to have to check that out.
By the way, Joe Pesci, by all accounts, is a great guy. I'll never forget the story I heard about him running into a little kid in an airport. And the kid goes, I know you. You're Joe Pesci. And Joe Pesci looks down at him and says, hey, kid, who's your favorite actor? And the kid looks up at him and says, you are. And he reaches into his pocket and pulls out $100 bill and stuffs it in the kid's pocket. And he says, that's the right answer, kid, and walks away. Like, Joe Pesci is a great guy. Like, that's a very cool interaction I've heard that story several times, and I think that's a very cool sort of interaction and right on brand for who he is. Like, of course, I'm your favorite actor. He does some incredible stuff. My Cousin Vinny is really a good movie. It should probably,
I
if it's not,
love that movie.
it should probably be on our list. It's a great movie.
Yes.
And it's got a lot of great people in it. Marissa Tomei, Fred Gwynn absolutely knocks it out of the park as the judge.
Yeah. Did you say Utes?
Utes. That's a great Joe Pesci. And if you've never seen With Honors, it's a different side of Pesci. You should watch it. It is Joe Pesci playing a character that I've never looked into this. I'm not sure, but I swear it's Joe Pesci playing a character that I think somebody wrote for like the serious version of Robin Williams. You know, when Robin Williams would do like Good Will Hunting, or something, not the crazy voices and Mrs. Doubtfire Robin Williams, but like the heartfelt Robin Williams. I swear, With Honors was written with that sort of idea in mind, and Pesci is who they wound up with, and he's just great in it. With Honors, great movie. Everybody should watch it. Well, what else about Goodfellas?
I mean, I think that good. I would say Goodfellas. If you're going to talk gangster movies, it's to me it's the movie that most what I said earlier, and that kind of just sucks you into the story. Like you're in the middle of the not action, because it's not an action movie, but you're in the middle of everything that happens. You feel like you're sitting in the scenes with these guys, and you're experiencing it, being there. They do an excellent job of that, and I think that this movie's exceptional at doing that. I don't think there's another gangster movie that does that as well as this movie, if that makes any sense.
This is probably my favorite one to watch, a mafia movie to watch. I think Godfather and Godfather 2 are better movies artistically. But I think that if you give me, you can only watch one of these three, and that's what I'm in the mood for is a gangster movie, is a mobster movie. I think Goodfellas is the one I would probably pick up.
Yeah, because you could relate more to it. It does such a good job of that, and that's why that scene at the end pisses me off so much, because I'm abruptly just pushed out of it.
Right. I get it. One of the big problems that I had with Snatch that we talked about 2 weeks ago were the things that took me out of the movie. And what you're talking about, it did not have necessarily that same effect on me, but it did on you. And so I fully understand how that is frustrating. I'm engaged here, and you've just reminded me that I'm watching a movie, and I don't like that. No, thank you. That's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted this experience to be. Does Goodfellas rank in your like top echelon? I realize none of us have a top 10 list lined out, but is this something that would rank in your top 10, top 20, top 5, any of that kind of stuff?
Not top 5, pushing top 10. I would say definitely top 15.
Yeah, that's about where I would have it too. Like it's probably in my top 10, but it would be like right up there in 9 or 10 or whatever. And movie lists are so subjective and generic, and they move around. I just listened to Cinefix is a great channel on YouTube. If you like movies, they do a great job with some of their movie content. Cinefix, they are currently doing a podcast that is the 100 greatest movies of all time. They've used an algorithm, and 3 of them have made lists, and they're working their way through. They just did their last episode on The Dark Knight, which is in my top 5. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a spectacular movie. Their algorithm had The Dark Knight at 96, and they actually struck it from the list and replaced it because they they had their reasons, and you just have to go and listen to that episode of Cinefix to find those reasons. But they really bagged on the movie the whole time, and I'm like, this is just proof that this is such a subjective thing, because I think it's a top 5 movie of all time, and they don't think it's one of the top 100 greatest movies. So
Wow.
it's all subjective.
They're wrong. You're right, Philip, just so you know.
The argument that they seem to make the most often was they don't like where Hollywood has gone with superhero movies and the fact that it dominates so much of the box office now. They blame that on the year that Dark Knight came out and made $1 billion, and Iron Man came out and did really well. And those two things together kind of greenlit everything that we're in now. So they're,
but there's a reason why, and it's because both of those movies you just mentioned are freaking fantastic movies. That's why. If they were terrible, none of that would have happened. You can't just dismiss them because you don't like the results of those movies being so great. Yeah, that's rubbish.
I agree. They've already had conversations about Star Wars and Jaws, 2 movies that changed the way movies were done and marketed, not for the better, by the way. And they left those in their list. So this seemed disingenuous. The cool thing right now is to bag on Nolan and to bag on Dark Knight because everybody loved it so much for so long. They did, by the way. If you want to skip the episode, it's great. It's a great series of podcasts if you ever want to sit down and listen to podcasts about movies. But one of their things that they all agreed on was that Heath Ledger's performance was absolutely amazing, and that's true. It is unequivocally one of the best performances that's ever been put on film. He does an incredible job with making that character memorable and amazing. And another one that fits into this sort of Arthur Fleck, Tyler Durden, Henry Hill sort of everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people romanticize and make a hero out of. And like, that's not the point. The point is not that the Joker is fun. Let's be like him. So yeah, I think this would be in my top 10, but again, movie list, so subjective. Who knows? What is what? Well, we move into another movie. 2 weeks from now, we're going to get together and talk about another movie. And I think it's the perfect movie for the holiday season. Do you remember what it is, Leo?
I'm trying to think right now. I think I do.
We're going to get together. My calendar says the 17th is the next time we get together. And we're going to get together and talk about what I think could be the perfect holiday movie. The reason I say it's the perfect holiday movie is that it proves that on the corporate level, the lower level people are expendable. The corporation wants what the corporation wants, and the lower level people are not important. Just give us what we want on the corporate level. And that's capitalism, and it's Christmas. And so it's a perfect Christmas movie, even without a tree or Christmas light or anything that is Christmassy in the whole movie. It's a perfect Christmas movie because it's a celebration of capitalism and what capitalism does. Am I wrong, Leo?
No, you're not wrong. You're wrong about Die Hard not being a Christmas movie, but
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
That's where you're wrong.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. Die Hard's a Christmas movie, then like all the Lethal Weapons also have to be a Christmas movie, and nobody wants to do that. So let's not do this. No, I'm excited about this next movie, a movie that I had not seen, although it's been around my entire lifetime. I had not seen this movie until about 4 years ago when I finally sat down and watched it, and I did it the right way. This is going to be a great clue for people. I did it the right way. I shut off every light in my bedroom, and I projected it big screen on the ceiling above me and put on noise canceling headphones and watched the movie exactly the way you should watch it. Like if you're watching the movie we're covering on the 17th on your phone screen in a lighted living room or a lighted airport, you're doing it wrong. You do not understand what this movie should be. You have to watch it somewhere dark, and you have to immerse yourself in this movie to get everything out of it. Great movie, really good movie. I'm excited to talk about what it does. And I love that it's a Christmas movie. It's all about capitalism. Well, with all that being said, I don't think we have anything else to cover, do we?
No, I think we're done.
Great. Well, then it's only left for me to remind you that life's like a movie. Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Go out and have a great time getting ready for Christmas and preparing for the holiday season. We'll see you soon.